we got some breaking news, champs. The whole boxing world is talking about Canelo Alvarez and the PBC going their separate ways after there was a breach in Canelo's contract. So a lot of fans and content creators are calling Canelo a duck, but very few are not. And I believe both sides are correct, and let me explain how. We're not just gonna cook, we're gonna fillet and roast on this one. So this is the topic that we are going to be talking about next. But before we get into that, if you guys are not subscribed, please punch and knock out that subscription button. That way you'll never see it again. And ding the notification bell. That way you never miss any of my new boxing videos. Alright guys, let's get to the round. Ding ding. Okay champs, let's get started. Let's start off with ESPN and Mike Coppinger. Mike Coppinger tweeted this: Canelo Alvarez and the PBC mutually agreed to part ways. And sources told ESPN, well, there's 2 fights left on a 3-fight deal, and it was signed in June. And the pact called for Canelo Alvarez to fight Jermall Charlo on Cinco de Mayo weekend. However, Canelo Alvarez and the PBC could not agree to the terms. Jermall's twin brother Jermell had a lackluster performance back in September against Canelo Alvarez, killing any brotherly revenge angle. And Charlo came off a 29-month layoff, and he failed to impress with Jose Benavidez in September. So because of that, there was not a big demand for Canelo versus Charlo. And I do remember that fight very well. It was okay, it wasn't a boring fight. And Jose Benavidez was moving up in weight, fighting at a catchweight, I believe at 162. And I remember that Charlo could not make weight. At the weigh-in, he came out weighing 165. So they gave Charlo some time to come back and reweigh himself to cut some weight off. And I believe Charlo made history for coming and reweighing himself and actually weighing more than he came in the first time. He came in weighing at 167. Now that is only 1 pound from being at 168. He should be fighting at 168 because he obviously cannot make 160 anymore. If not, he would never ask for a catchweight. So people saying that Charlo is only a 160 pounder and Canelo is trying to make a fight with Charlo at 168, that is not true. Charlo came in fighting at 167. So how is Charlo a 160 pounder when he can't make 160 anymore? But I do not believe this is a duck against Charlo because Canelo Alvarez was promised $35 million per fight. And this was for a 3-fight deal, but the PBC could no longer be able to afford to pay Canelo Alvarez. So this is just business. Everything is fair in love and war and business. And as we all know, Showtime left boxing and left PBC without a home and with a lot smaller budget. But I am sure if Showtime never left the PBC, they would have been able to afford to pay Canelo Alvarez. Because if I do recall, before Canelo fought Bebo and lost to Bebo, they offered him $50 million per fight. So it was $100 million for a 2-fight deal. But since Canelo lost to Bebo, his stock took a hit. So the PBC was able to get in a 3rd fight with Canelo Alvarez. So instead of a 2-fight deal for $100 million, it was a 3-fight deal for $100 million. But that was when Showtime was backing up the PBC. But now that Showtime is gone, the PBC had to go to Amazon Prime. So they only gave the PBC a distribution deal and no budget. So now they can't afford to give Canelo that kind of money to fight any fighter. But they will give him a guarantee against a fighter that they know for sure they will make a good amount of money. And I do not believe the Charlo fight will give them a good amount of money. I actually believe it will make less money than the other Charlo. Hey, but these two twins look very alike, guys. And before, when they were both fit, I wasn't able to tell the difference from both of them. But now I can. I call one of them Fit Charlo and the other one Fat Charlo. And yes, to a lot of people that would not be fat, but I am way fitter than any of these boxers. and I am just stating facts from my point of view. But if the PBC did make the Charlo versus Canelo fight, they could have used the same poster and the same videos and just call it Charlo versus Canelo. And since they almost got the same name and exactly the same last name, nobody would have told the difference. So the PBC wasn't able to pay Canelo Alvarez the guarantee for the Charlo fight. Canelo Alvarez wasn't having it. He was like, good fellas, F you, pay me. So this is not a duck to me, it's a breach of contract and it's just business. But on the other hand, David Benavidez, I believe this is a duck. Since Canelo Alvarez only offered David Benavidez $5 million to fight him. And I believe Benavidez said yes, and there's no way I believe Benavidez only gets $5 million to fight a caliber of Canelo Alvarez. Because I heard David Benavidez made more fighting Andrade and Caleb Plant. I don't know the exact number, but people are saying it was a lot more than $5 million. I would have at least think they would offer David Benavidez at least 10 or even $15 million. And David Benavidez stated that he will take the minimum. And not just that, Canelo was offered $55 million and he still said no to the fight. Now that is a duck. But who knows, maybe Canelo wants to maximize his earnings before he fights David Benavidez, just like any other boxer around. If this wasn't the case, then Tank Davis and Devin Haney would have fought already. And Ryan Garcia is the only one from the four kings that's about to fight their second, fourth king. Teofimo Lopez and Tank gotta jump on board. But rumors is Canelo Alvarez is going back to the zone with Eddy Hearn. And he is supposed to be fighting Jaime Munguia and Berlanga, and not exactly in that order. Now I understand Jaime Munguia, but not Berlanga. I believe Berlanga has still a long way to go. He just had a fight this past Saturday against the Irishman, and he looked okay on the fight. And I know the Irishman was undefeated, and it's always harder to take the O from an undefeated fighter. I forgot his name, but he was definitely untested. So Berlanga was going to be the undefeated fighter's toughest test. So because Canelo Alvarez is not going to fight David Benavidez, David Benavidez is moving up to 175, and he will be facing none other than Alexander Bostic. Now, since I know a lot about fitness, I don't think David Benavidez is going to be able to move back down to 168. And if he does, I don't think he'll be the same fighter. But in his defense, I think he will be a better fighter at 175. And if he does this, I think Canelo Alvarez will finally fight him along the road, making David Benavidez move down to 168 with a weight stipulation or a rehydration clause, and making David Benavidez be a shell of himself. If David Benavidez and Canelo Alvarez fight right now, I gotta give the edge to David Benavidez. But if David Benavidez moves up, then moves down to fight Canelo Alvarez with a rehydration clause, I gotta give it to Alvarez. Do you guys think Canelo Alvarez will fight David Benavidez? Comment below and I'll write to everyone back. If you guys like the show, subscribe, like the video, share the video, and that's it for me, champs. I gotta roll.